Good morning, YouTube. This is Choppadong again coming at you with the video. I recorded the Vegas Lines podcast last night with our buddy, the Football Geek, and I know that that one went pretty long, went a couple of hours. It gives a lot of information, a lot of deep information. This I'm going to attempt to do, which is just a skim. This is for practice for myself. I just figured I would do it live on the air and then fire it out and see how quickly I can get a slate broken down. Just in the interest of time, and guys are on treadmills and whatever else. So what I do when I look at a slate and when I'm just skimming and looking at it, I mean, if you want the goods, you could come back Friday as a VIP and you listen to the Geeks player picks and his thoughts and all of his stuff, because that's really where this thing is going, and that's where you're going to get the best information. But in interest of speed and timing, I'm just going to try and blow through the games and give you a real quick glance. You look at my article, The Wishbone on DFS Army. I do a lot of this at a glance type stuff that's designed to skim and save you time. And if you want deeper information, you can look inside and you can find us in there. So anyway, dfs.army.com is the site. The Wishbone is the article. Let's open it up and let's jump in. And let's take a look at the Vegas lines. Now, some of these have changed a little bit since the opening back on Tuesday when I released this article, but we're going to use this as the template or foundation for what it is we're going to talk about. And then I'll show you a neat little trick if we have time at the end that will use projections and rankings to show you where the value is in some of these players. And this is the large part of what forms my research. Of course, I do look at matchups and I do look at some recent numbers and I look at targets and touches and I look at some of these things to make sure guys are getting the opportunity that we want. But by now it's week 3. We pretty much know who the mainstays in the offenses are, and we pretty much know when we're taking a first look at a slate who we're going to key on, and then we can go dig into those players. What we're looking for is what games do we maybe like the best, what offenses and defenses are we wanting to sort of attack with in what spots, and that's where we use Vegas lines. When I look into the Vegas lines, I'm looking for implied totals over, say, 24, in a lot of cases over 26, even 28, and I don't want to see red numbers into 17s and 18s unless I'm going to use the defense against them, and that's a good spot for the defense, granted the spread is big enough. So if we're going to talk about the games, I'm just going to touch on the game, a basic game flow of what that tells us on paper, and then maybe run through the positions and the players to look at. It's a faster way to do it than typing it all out. Green Bay, Chicago tonight at Green Bay, 7-point favorite. That should lean to running late in the game. That means you need to keep your eyes on Ty Montgomery. His salary has crept up there. It's probably not worth it. In the value indicator that I might get to a little bit later in the video, honestly, his price is up there to where he's really not a value anymore based on the numbers and based on the way he's being used. But the 26 implied total for Green Bay tells me Aaron Rodgers, Ty Montgomery, Devontae Adams, if Randall Cobb plays, Jordy Nelson, all in play, Martellus Bennett, these guys are all in play. You want to check the DVP numbers and see where the weak spots are in that Chicago offense. Are they giving up points to the quarterback? Are they giving up points to the tight end? You might even stack them if you can afford them, a quarterback and a tight end stack. If that's a Chicago weak spot, that's what you need to do. That suggests also that Chicago is going to be playing from behind. When Chicago is playing from behind and on the road, there's a little bit of a trick there. When playing from behind, teams usually throw. Teams usually have to play catch up, and they usually have to go kind of balls to the wall to try and stay competitive in the game. But on the road, as Kevin has often taught me, if they fall too far behind, road teams tend to quit. So they may not try as hard. You may not get Glennon airing it out. The only player in this game that I'd really be interested in, I'd want to check, is Tariq Cohen, of course. Jordan Howard's a little dinged up, nicked up. He had a great game last week, but uh, it's kind of a committee with Cohen, and I don't know what Jordan Howard's price is. I don't know what Tariq Cohen's. I'm really off the radar. And then on top of that, you might look at Zach Miller. He's been used. It seemed like he was getting some pretty consistent targets. I would check Green Bay's DVP and see how they look against tight ends, and then I would turn to Zach Miller and see if he's getting 6 or 7 targets a game, and if he's being used in the red zone or if he's being relied on to break big plays. If he's being relied on to break big plays, be off of him because those are unpredictable. We want predictable. In terms of the game being on a Thursday night, I still don't know where I stand on this game. Being that DraftKings is taking the slates away from us and overlapping and forcing us to play these stupid 3 and 4 game slates, I'm not going to probably be touching this slate or this game on DraftKings. I'll probably fade the slate. Over on FanDuel, where the slate has the Sunday, Monday, or has the Monday through Thursday, I may play it over there. If I do play the slate, I probably will not fade this game. Short week for Green Bay. I'll probably have a Green Bay player or two, but I'm not going to stack this game up and go crazy. I'm going to be dealing with inflated ownership because Green Bay Packers are a brand name and Tariq Cohen is the hot topic and whatever. So a lot of people that want to watch the game on TV tonight are going to throw these guys in their lineups. You're going to find a third of your 50-50s have a player or two from this game. And some, by the end of the night, that are at the top, whether they have 30 points or whether they have 80 points, the top 5 or 6 in that 100-man 50-50 is going to stack this game up. That's just what they do. I consider that dead money, and I want to attack that most times. However, I can't this week because Green Bay could go off. I don't want to be in position to where I fade this game and then have Green Bay go off and put me behind the 8 ball heading into the weekend. Is it recoverable? Yes. Is it ideal? No. So for me, it's easier to just either fade the entire slate, or if I play the slate, pick a player or two from this game, because the 26 implied total and the -7 spread does indicate Green Bay's going to be scoring some points, and we know Chicago's not a good team. So moving on, London game. London games are weird. They tend to, I know it's not a low scoring game, but it's a weird one in that it can be a little bit random. We don't really know where the points come from. There's travel involved. There's all sorts of crazy crap involved. And it throws that little extra element of uncertainty into this lineup. I don't like these games typically. I've been fine these games as a general rule, but honestly, the 49.5 point total is begging me to get into this game. So let's talk a little bit about who we would look at. We're looking over here at 26 implied from New Orleans. That brings in Drew Brees. I don't like them technically in a neutral site, but they've traveled so far they might as well be on the road. Your running back committee is a mess. You've got all of your other guys in play, your Cooks, Snead comes back, Fleener, these guys, you need to look into them. I would be looking for Michael Thomas myself, not Brandon Cooks. Michael Thomas is who I would be looking at. I would check his salary. I would see if the Miami defense is weak against the wide receiver number one. Then I go over to the Miami side of things, and Jay Ajayi has a busted knee. Jay Cutler's in play because this game suggests, with a closer spread and a 23.5 point total, it suggests it might be a little back and forth. It might turn into a bit of a shootout. If so, quarterbacks are typically heavily involved. Jay Cutler's probably in play, and he's probably pretty cheap. I would look into that. I would see, we know that the New Orleans defense is terrible. We know that when we look at DVP numbers, we see a lot of 29s, 30s, 31s as far as rankings in categories for New Orleans. So to me, that brings a lot of Miami into play. But Jay Ajayi with the bone bruise in his knee probably is a decoy more than anything. They'll probably hand him the rock. He probably won't be all that effective. GPP flyer, sure, maybe if you're one of those guys that says, well, he could go off. That's probably true. But odds are, based on last week being in a great matchup with the New York Jets, he won't go off. So I'm off of Jay Ajayi. Now, I do like Jarvis Landry. I do like Devontae Parker. A lot of projection systems, including our own inside DFS Army, are really high on Devontae Parker. And that connection with Devontae Parker and Jay Cutler might be something good. And here's why. If Devontae Parker gets heavily used, then you're getting long, aired out passes from Jay Cutler, who we know forces them in against a bad New Orleans Saint defense. If he breaks a couple of 2-3 catches for 50, 60 yards, maybe even each, piles up 100, 125 yards and a touchdown, maybe even two, then I can see that happening. It's going to be rare, but I can see that happening. If that happens, then you've got big scoring in chunks out of Cutler and big scoring in chunks out of Devontae Parker, and that's a great thing for a stack. But number two, pairing Parker with Cutler also brings you exposure to Jarvis Landry. And if Jarvis Landry is getting a bunch of, 8, 10, 12 targets for 4 to 6 yards each, he's going to rack up some small yardage there too and help Jay Cutler's floor. What we don't want to see is Jay Cutler forcing it into double and triple coverage and just giving the ball to the New Orleans Saints. That would be a train wreck for your lineup. But those would be the guys I'd be focused on. Jay Cutler, Jarvis Landry, Devontae Parker, and that's about it for this game. Defense is off the board, not a big enough spread, and it's a weird situation, weird game anyway. So now, moving on out of London back to the States, 1 o'clock p.m. New England Patriots are hosting Carolina. We know Carolina's terrible. It's got an 8.5 point spread and a 47 point over under. That means we've got 28 points is a huge implied number. That tells us now the 8.5 point spread tells us there should be some running late, but that tells us there's about 4 touchdowns scheduled to be scored in this game. Where are they going to go? Brady's going to be responsible for about 2/3 of them, so about 2.5 to 3 of the touchdowns should be Tom Brady's. In there may be a running touchdown or two, but there may be a James White early in the game. There may be a Brandon Cooks. There may be a Danny Amendola. There may be a Gronk type of touchdown. He spreads the ball out so well. Your safest play is always naked Brady. However, if you want to pair him with somebody in a tournament and get lucky, go for it. The problem is in cash, it's not safe enough to pair him with somebody because his production is not tightly focused on one guy. So I'm off the table for stacking this game in cash games, but in tournaments, I would pick a receiver and maybe hope to catch the guy he throws 2 touchdown passes to. If you get lucky there, boom, you shoot up the leaderboards, you're doing okay. Now, Brady's highly unaffordable, so it's going to be a stretch to get in there. You're going to need some deep, deep, deep value. That may be where you dig after taking a shot at a Willie Snead, or going over here to Miami and seeing if Devontae Parker's as cheap as he might be. Those would be some areas where I might look. Now, going over to the Carolina side, off the game entirely. Cam sucks, doesn't have Benjamin, most likely doesn't have Greg Olsen. We don't know the committee issue with Jay Stu and Christian McCaffrey. I do like Christian McCaffrey a little bit. He was popping up on some value reports, but it's really all that New England has to focus on, and I can't see them taking anybody else away. If Cam wants to try and beat us, down the field, freaking fine. What do I care? People are going to talk to Evan Funchess and whatever else. I don't see it. I could be wrong, garbage time, etc., but I don't see it. If you wanted to stack this game up in a GPP and take Brady and Cooks and Gronk and then run it back with Devin Funchess, now you're on to something. Or even McCaffrey, now you're on to something because you can get that cheaper guy into the game, get both sides of it, and if for some reason, like last week, it turns into a shootout because this New England Patriots defense really is pretty bad, then maybe you've got something there for a tournament. But again, focusing that tightly on the outcome of one game is bad for cash. Don't use that in your 50-50s. Moving down to Dallas, LA Rams going to Dallas, 8.5 point favorite for Dallas, and a 27.5 point total. Isn't 28, but it's damn close. I will tell you, this is a Zeke type of game. I don't like really a lot of. I mean, I'll tell you the sneakiest quarterback on the entire slate, in my opinion, is Dak. If you look at his QBR and his total production premium and things like that, he's one of the most consistent, most productive quarterbacks in the league. He's one of the best kept secrets for your cash games. He's usually pretty cheap. You don't have to pay up for a Rodgers. You're not going to get the ceiling of a Rodgers. Dak doesn't throw for 4 touchdowns very often. But what Dak doesn't do is he doesn't turn the ball over. He uses his legs. He scores rushing touchdowns, and he pops 1 or 2 a game for 200 to 250 yards or so, and that's very, very solid for a lower price point. If you wanted to put Dak and Zeke in the same lineup for cash, you get exposure to every touchdown that Dallas is going to score this week, and their defense isn't exactly running a bunch of pick sixes, so you're going to get next to 4 touchdowns worth of exposure in this game if it goes according to plan, and it's very safe to do so with a running back and a safe quarterback that's consistently productive. I love that combination this week. Now, anyone else, Dez? Okay, I heard a lot of people talk about him. Our own Kevin was really raving about him. I get it. The Rams don't have corners that can slow him down, but I'm not a Dez guy. Dez doesn't seem to catch the ball and go for 125 yards very often. Dez seems to get the ball on the 3 on the goal line when they should be giving it to Zeke, and he does that little push off back shoulder throw. He's a one-trick pony, in my opinion. I'm biased. I don't like Dez. That's what I see out of him every time I watch the games, and it makes me throw my hat across the room because he just muds his little out route, boom, pushes off that corner, gets his separation, and he's supposedly some great guy, throws the big X in the air, and I think he's a turd. But that said, if you want to play him, go ahead and play him. Stack him up with if you ran the Dez, Zeke, Dak stack in GPPs, fine. It's got as good a shot as any at going off. Jason Witten's a little bit pricey too, but he's probably in play. On the Rams side, Gurley's probably in play. It's a very sneaky play this week. I don't hear anyone talking about him. Jared Goff might be throwing from behind, and Jared Goff has actually been okay, and I don't see Dallas as being an elite defense. Then I look over at the pass catchers. Cooper Kupp was kind of a thing. He's not really being used very well. Robert Woods, Sammy Watkins, I don't even know who their tight end is there. I'm not really interested in those guys. So I'll probably be digging into the Chicago or the Carolina game, or not Carolina, or the Miami game for cheap stuff if I need to, because they feel like they're in a little more trustworthy spots. The Minnesota and Detroit game is offline. You've got Detroit going into Minnesota. We don't have a point spread. We don't have a whatever. I don't need that as a crutch. I can tell you that if Sam Bradford doesn't play, I like Dalvin Cook. I still like Diggs for GPPs. I like Thielen for cash. And I won't probably be touching Case Keenum. I don't think that what he did last week is duplicatable. I think that that was point chasing, going back over his career. I know I saw him with the Rams, and I know that I'm biased, but to be honest with you, I just don't think the guy's a very good quarterback, or he would be the starter, not the backup. So I'm not really into that one. I do love Adam Thielen tonight. If you want to listen to the other podcast, feel free. I had a lot of thoughts on that. It was one of the few times when I was speaking up. But I do like his spot. And I look over at the Detroit side of things, and Minnesota's a tough defense, man, and they're at home. So Stafford, no. Riddick, no. Abdullah, no. Ebron, maybe if there's a weak spot in that my Minnesota defense, maybe it's at tight end. Golden Tate, no, because he'll probably draw Rhodes closed, Xavier Rhodes. And then we've got who else over there? Michael Jones Jr. It's just no. These guys are kind of flashy streak. I tend to play them at home in softer matchups. And when they play a tougher team, especially in their division, especially on the road, I tend to get off of them. And I think that everybody else should too. For cash, GPPs, everything's viable in a huge 250,000 person tournament. Yeah, I mean, some random crap's going to go off and win. You want to throw a dart and get lucky, go for it. I personally wouldn't, but that's why I don't play in those big tournaments. Moving to Tennessee and Houston, there's not a lot to say about this game. It's a crap low total. It's a low spread. Tennessee going into Houston is in a bad spot, so that writes off Mariota. Everyone but maybe a Rashard Matthews if he shows he's getting a ton of targets. Other than that, I'm off of it. As far as Houston's concerned, at home, I don't really like anybody there either. I don't even like the cheap quarterbacks in crap matchups, and I feel like that's what this is. I do like DeAndre Hopkins every week, so forcing him the ball. He's going to be one of the target leaders again this year, and as long as he catches the majority of the targets, then he's a PPR stud, best used on DraftKings than over on FanDuel. But if he stays super dirt cheap on FanDuel, I'll use him some there too. Next game, New York Jets hosting the Jacksonville Jaguars. 39.5 point total. Puke. 3.5 point road favorite in Jacksonville. I don't mind that game as far as, okay, no Jets. Let's just get that off the table right now. Nothing Jets. I like a lot of stuff on the Jacksonville side of things. I'm biased. I can't get on the Marquise Lee, Allen Hurns bandwagon, but they're cheap. If you need salary, they might be worth it. It's not a dominant spread suggesting they're going to run the ball. However, they do run the ball a ton. That's what they try to do. Short passes to the tight end. That's why Mercedes Lewis had a big week last week. Short passes to, Marquise Lee or Allen Hurns to keep that ball controlled so Bortles doesn't become a turnover machine. And of course, they feed the rock to Leonard Fournette. This to me is a Leonard Fournette type of week. He's 20, 25 carries, couple of receptions, just ball control, ground and pound. No reason to air it out and risk Bortles turning the game over to the Jets. Let's just keep doing what's been doing in a high volume out of a decent rookie running back. To me, gets my attention. I love running him with Zeke. I love running him if you're playing the Monday night game with Kareem Hunt. I love that combination. Leonard Fournette is actually one of my favorite plays on the entire slate. The rest of the game, kind of moving on. Cincinnati at Cleveland. Crap. Cincinnati defense is in a great spot. Cleveland is just kind of nothing. DeShone Kaiser's been a thing because he uses his legs. He's like a Tyrod Taylor. He's in a bad offense. He doesn't have a lot to throw to. So he uses his legs to kind of round out his floor. Cash, safe, perhaps, as long as he is cheap, cheap, cheap. You can use him. If his price starts coming up into those middle tiers, no. But as long as he's cheap, he's usable. As far as Cincinnati, Dalton, no. AJ Green could have a good day coming back, so you might want to run him, but I'm not big on expensive receivers in a 40-point total game. I understand their implied total over here is a 21.5, and that implies 3 touchdowns. Great. Is AJ Green going to get 2 of them? I don't know. They get 1? I don't know. So to be honest with you, I'm not as excited as the industry might be. I just don't see the need to target this game on such a low total of 40. I would rather spend my time in these higher total games personally. But, again, that's just me. If he goes off and has another 100 and some odd yard day with a touchdown, I'm going to look like an idiot. But I think I can probably live with that because I don't think he's going to be as chalky this week as he was last week. I don't think it's going to burn me as bad. It's going to help others more than it's going to hurt me, if that makes sense. So, move down to Pittsburgh at Baltimore. Crap. I can't. Man, Pittsburgh on the road. You know the Big Ben splits. You know Le'Veon Bell hasn't quite been himself. He did have a good sneaky week last week, 20-some points, which is about average for him. That means he's usable again. If he's continuing to see 90-something% of the snaps and he's continuing to put up, 20 to 25 touches, he's usable. He's got the talent. He can go off in any matchup, in any situation. Is he cash safe this week? I don't think so at this price, given that I also have Zeke and Fournette and Hunt and other guys in good spots. I don't think I need to reach this. I think he's going to be popular because he's a Cadillac and he's a brand name. Maybe not as popular as most weeks, but he's certainly not a must play going up against a pretty tough Baltimore defense on the road. Now, over in Baltimore, do I like anything? No. I don't like Flacco. I don't like Jeremy Maclin. I might like Buck Allen if he's cheap. I haven't looked at his price yet, and I would like him more on DraftKings than I would on FanDuel, where it's a PPR reward, a full point PPR as opposed to half a point. I like that situation better, but I don't see myself touching anything on the Ravens. I really don't see myself touching much over on Pittsburgh. I'm going to let everybody else chase into that game and play the brand names because they don't do their research. And I'm just going to see this is a high, maybe a floor game where these guys are going to test their floors. I don't think they're necessarily going to underperform overwhelmingly, but I think they're going to be down on their floor number. If they had a projection of 20 points and their floor was 12 and their ceiling was 26, I see them down around the 12 range easier than up at the 26 range for sure. I see them down at the 12 range before they even get to the 20 average more often in this matchup than I do see them doing better things. So if they've got a floor, that's great for your cash games. But if they don't have a ceiling this week because they are not in a scenario where they can test their ceiling most times, then you need to be off of them because they don't have the reward or the upside to bail you out when things go wrong elsewhere in your lineup. You need to use this lineup for a whole bunch of different reasons. It works together as a unit, as a team, and you're trying to weave in all of those floors, but also guys with their ceilings in play this week because you're going to need a couple of those ceiling plays to bail out a couple of people that will still inevitably miss their floor. Happens every week. So bear that in mind when you're looking at a matchup like this where we're going on the road and facing a tougher defense. That's more of a floor type of game without the ceiling. Therefore, in GPPs again, fine. Stack them all up. Run Ben and Antonio Brown or Martavis Bryant. I don't care. But in cash games, it doesn't make sense to be testing your floor only. You need to be testing your floor, or you need to be confident in your floor in a matchup that's also going to test its ceiling. Okay? That's again why we target higher total games, higher implied totals between the teams. And 23.75 just ain't going to cut it, man. All right, Atlanta, Buffalo going in. And an 8.5 point spread. 8.5 point spread, that's a big one. No faith in Buffalo on the road. Again, this is, to me, it's going to run late. It's going to be the Devonta Freeman show late. So the way I see Freeman's squarely in play for me. I don't like the committee that he's in with Tevin Coleman and the kind of 2-to-1 touch ratio that he gets. I'd rather see him get 3-to-1, 4-to-1, and then only use Tevin Coleman to sparingly rest Devonta Freeman and keep him fresh. But there is no denying that he's getting the quality carries. Freeman's getting the quality carries when it counts. So if this game runs late into the fourth quarter and they've got a big lead they're trying to protect, I can see them using both to salt it away. But if they get down towards the goal line or something, I can see them using more of Freeman to punch it in. I'm not 100% sure on that, but that's the way I've been feeling about this thing going. Now, when it comes down to Matt Ryan, I don't know how much they'll need to use him. In a game that they should have firmly in hand. I don't know how much they're going to use an Austin Hooper, although this is a big home favorite with a high implied total. This is a spot where you want to use your tight ends, and a cheap one like a Hooper is in play. I just don't know how much they're going to use him. They get down, if it's a competitive game early on and they get down to the 2-yard line, they might dump it to him in the red zone. I don't know. I just haven't seen that yet, and I haven't seen a lot of targets out of him yet, so I don't have the most confidence in that type of a call just yet. But Your other plays, Julio Jones always in play, set to go off, but damn, he's expensive if you miss on him again. I don't like the guy for cash games. I really don't, because if he doesn't have a great game, he misses his value, and he's damned expensive for me to miss that value. I need him to have a floor, and wide receivers are very volatile. The only expensive wide receiver that I know of on the planet that is not very volatile is Antonio Brown. And I'm not even using him this week. So what's that tell you? Julio, cash games off the table for me. Tournaments, sure. Stack, load him up with Freeman and Ryan. I don't care. Now, on the Buffalo side of things, well, I'm sorry, the biggest value play out of this game is Mohamed Sanu, especially in a PPR format where Sanu's getting 6, 7, 8 catches a game, and he's being used as the number 2. And most of these guys, their softer cornerback covers the 2, or their weakest cornerback covers the slot, and that's where Sanu lives. So Sanu's been getting open, and Matt Ryan's been looking for him and finding him, to the point it's been actually taking away from Julio Jones. There will be a game where Sanu disappears and Julio has the show, but I don't know if it's yet. And I don't in short ball control situations where we're trying to grind clock, your slot receivers used a little bit more than your big game threat like a Julio anyway. So to me, it's a Sanu game. I'm not saying he's gonna have a big game and 2 scores and 10 catches or anything, not at all. I'm saying it's a consistent Sanu scenario where 6, 7 touches, 50 to 75 yards. If you get lucky, a touchdown on top of it. That's about what you're going to get out of him. And I think it's another week where that's a very consistent scenario that will play out. Now, on the Buffalo side of things, Tyrod Taylor should be throwing from behind, should be running for his life because that Atlanta defense is in play this week. Big, huge spread. And with that big spread, it means that Tyrod should be throwing late. Tyrod's a bit of a turnover machine when he has to really air it out. I don't know who he has to throw to. Jordan Matthews, I don't know. I don't even know who their second guy is, Zay Jones or whatever. Don't care. The one that I'd be focused on pass catching would honestly be Shady McCoy first. LaShawn McCoy is a pass catching back, and that is the Atlanta Falcons' weakness. They have given up big points to Ty Montgomery and Tariq Cohen and some others. Those pass catching backs seem to give them fits. So Shady can do both. He can ground and pound. Hasn't been as effective there, but he's been catching a lot of balls lately and putting together a lot of yardage there. So he's a great sneaky little play to put together over on DraftKings, and I even like the guy on FanDuel to a certain degree. Maybe not as much as Zeke and Fournette, but he's kind of up there in maybe the top, say, 6 running backs that I would be looking at. Now, Charles Clay is the other pass catcher that I would be looking to in this game. Tight ends, I don't know if that's a weakness. Again, it's a DVP check. I don't know if it's a weakness in Atlanta, but it is definitely something that you need to look into. And because he is a preferred downfield type of receiver, it seems like for Tyrod Taylor. Dude's been scoring touchdowns. He's been getting consistent 5, 6, 7 targets a game, and that leads to, 40, 50, 60, 70 yards. And at a cheap tight end, when all these other guys have been priced up all of a sudden, at a cheap tight end, he might be my go-to in cash because it's a volatile position, and since it's an up and down, unpredictable type of position, why pay for it? I don't need to pay for inconsistency. I want to pay for consistency. So I'd rather save my money at tight end and spend up at running back or somewhere where I can get more consistent points for cash games. For GPPs, all about hitting the gamble. So whatever. Next game, Tampa Bay, New York Giants. God, I don't like this game at all. I'm sorry. I know Jameis Winston's supposedly in play. I know that, Mike Evans is a target hog. I just don't know what else to say about this game. Maybe a Deshaun Jackson. I don't like the tight ends here. I don't like the running backs at all here. New York is a tougher defense, supposedly. I haven't seen much out of them yet. I can't stand Eli. Odell Beckham always can have a big game. I think that, I don't know, he just doesn't feel quite like he's there just yet. I'm not a big fan. None of these guys are cash safe, so let's just move on. Philadelphia at the Chargers, the pick'em game, 46.5 points, 23.25 implied for both sides. Philly's going all the way out west, and you've got your Wendell Smallwood talk. I'm inclined to believe, if he's cheap enough, that he's going to be used. He outsnapped and outcarried LeGarrette Blount. Blount gets the goal line work, but Smallwood's going to get everything else, in my opinion. And going back a couple of weeks without Sproles, you can kind of see that they used Sproles over Blount. So Smallwood's the closest thing they have to Sproles. So with Sproles disappearing, I can see them using Smallwood in that role. Carson Wentz likes to check it down, and Zach Ertz is his favorite target. Ertz is definitely in play. The receivers, Alshon Jeffrey, sure, but he's inconsistent. He's been getting targets though, but he's been fairly inconsistent in the box score, in my opinion, unless I'm just overlooking something. Nelson Aguilar pisses me off because I love slot receivers for PPR, but he's not getting targeted consistently enough for me. So really, the Philly offense is just kind of it is what it is. You might take a play here or there. I don't know how cash safe the offense is other than Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz paying up for tight end is cash safe in my opinion. You run over to the Chargers side, Phillip Rivers, I don't really know. Gordon's dealing with a silly knee issue or something. So I would say that his ceiling is capped and he'd be hard pressed to test his floor. I would say that Tyrell Williams and Travis Benjamin are not all they're cracked up to be. They're volatile. That's why their prices are so low. They could surprise you. They could go off and have a big game. Great. But for cash purposes, I don't see it. And then the only one left that I would be trusting or touching is Keenan Allen, and I'll fire that dude up in any format all day long because you do get one little bonus with Keenan Allen. Nobody else ever thinks of the guy. So being that nobody else thinks of the guy, there you have it. There you are. It's kind of a neat little benefit to cash games in that you've got a very, very solid player, a very, very cash safe player with a high floor and the potential ceiling to go off. Philly is not an elite defense. They're maybe good, but they're on the road and they're not elite. So this is a good spot for Keenan Allen to shine and get a touchdown and maybe have a 100-yard game. And if he does at his price level, he's going to be great. And if nobody else plays him in cash games, you do get the added benefit of sneaking up that leaderboard when everybody else is focused on, maybe AJ Green or, maybe Jarvis Landry or some of the other guys that aren't really, I didn't really hit that price range off the top of my head, but guys that are somewhat close to him. Keenan Allen's a little bit better play than those, in my opinion, and he always gets overlooked. So moving on. San Francisco sucks. Going into Arizona leads to a huge 7-point favorite for Arizona at home. Too bad we don't have David Johnson to grind the clock out, so we're going to have to use Carson Palmer and Larry Fitzgerald in the short passing game. Maybe a few lid lifters to J.J. Nelson and Jerron Brown down the field, but mostly it's going to be probably a little bit of the running game, but I don't know who to target there. Don't really care. They're not really explosive or exciting, but mostly Larry Fitzgerald. I don't mind running a little bit of Carson Palmer, but I don't think he's going to have a huge game. I think he's going to be doing a lot of short slot passing to Larry Fitzgerald, whose price did not adjust coming off of last week, being that they played on Monday night. So if Larry Fitzgerald has been a bargain for 4 weeks, we're just waiting for him to have his normal game, and he had it last week and his price didn't adjust. Maybe he gets on a little bit of a roll here, and maybe he's a huge value play this week. So I would be on that, but I wouldn't be on much else. Oakland at Denver. 47.2 2.5 point spread, 47-point total. It's kind of getting there. Oakland is pricey for this matchup. Denver is an elite defense. Denver is at home. I don't like any of those guys. Derek Carr, Amari Cooper, Michael Crabtree, Jared Cook. Jared Cook's not really overpriced, but the rest of them kind of are for this matchup. So I don't like it. Running back is a shit show over there, so I have no idea what to predict coming out of that thing. Even though we typically can attack Denver with the running game because their passing defense is so good, they force you to run the ball in volume. I just don't know who they're going to use in Oakland or who can be effective, so don't really like it. Denver's side is the side I would be focused on. Simeon is another cheaper quarterback. He's in a great spot. We've seen Oakland allow points to Mariota and some other passing game passers. So I mean, Kirk Cousins last week, hello. So it's a good spot for Trevor Simeon. I don't know how much they'll use C.J. Anderson. Maybe they use him a little more in the passing game. That'd be great. But the big focus here is Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders. These guys are both always about the same price. They also get quite overlooked, like a Keenan Allen, and they're cash safe, man. These guys always produce. Sometimes they go off, but they always produce. And they get their 6 to 10 targets a game, and they get their 60 to 80 yards, and maybe a touchdown if you get lucky. And hell, tonight, or if you want to load it up and run Simeon with both of them, and Simeon has another game where he throws for 4 touchdowns, maybe there's 2 touchdowns for each receiver, or a passing touchdown to a C.J. Anderson or something, and you pop all of that stuff, and that would be a GPP only type of play because it's very, very focused on one offense and dependent upon them scoring, say, 30 points this week. But it's well within the realm of feasibility. when you look at this game and how this game could play out. So that would be who I'd be focused on there. Indianapolis at Seattle. No, Indianapolis, no, no, no. Going into Legion of Boom, going out to Seattle. Seattle's a home splits team. They do get off to slow starts during the season, but they also do play better at home. Russell Wilson in play. Yeah, I don't know. I don't. A lot of people are going to like him. I'm not a big fan because I just still see him as inconsistent. And if I'm going to pay for inconsistency at quarterback, I might as well pay down in price and then pay up elsewhere. Uh, Doug Baldwin is okay, but I haven't seen a ton out of him. I know they had good games last week, but I don't know if that was kind of like the starting point. Maybe if you believe in hot streaks and getting on a roll, you play up to that a little bit more. I don't know why. I don't like the 41 point total in this game, even though it's a 27 for Seattle. Jimmy Graham has kind of been hurt and hobbled and hadn't looked great. So that sets that whole offense back. Who's their running back? They don't even have a legit running back. Yeah, you could play Chris Carson. He's going to get you some volume, and he should get you a lot of volume this week. But I don't know how much of a red zone threat he is. I don't know if he's going to get 20, 25 carries. It seems like he should. I don't know that for sure. I know that the Indianapolis defense sort of sucks, but I don't know what they're going to do or even how hard Seattle's going to have to try to win this game. It doesn't seem like Indianapolis is going to put up much of a threat. So maybe this game, ends up not being 27-14 like the implied shows. Maybe it ends up being something more like 20-10 or 17-14 or 17-9 or some crap. And to be honest with you, that's not a game I want any part of, especially for some of the price tags these guys are still carrying. On these websites, the price tags go way up and then they trickle down. They don't fall very quickly, and that kind of sets you up for bad matchups to kind of trick you and pay too much for the particular player. So even though this is a game I should be more excited about with that great big spread, Seattle defense definitely is in play because of that big spread. It's statistically a very, very good spot for that defense. But again, they're very, very expensive too. So you're going to have to find value somewhere else in the slate to get that defense. That's just kind of my brief thoughts about that game. And then on Monday night, this game's a phenomenal game to watch. It should be a phenomenal game to target. Should be action more or less on both sides. I think the KC defense is in play at home, but I think that Kirk Cousins in a GPP could be a sneaky little shot. I think that some of his pass catchers could be a sneaky little shot. Kansas City, it shows good on paper, but they are not an elite defense. They are a bend but don't break takeaway machine is what they are. So that doesn't bode well for Kirk Cousins, but it doesn't necessarily harm some of your other players on the Washington side of things. I wouldn't chase points with Chris Thompson. They're not going to use him any more than they did, and the dude was hitting home run after home run. It was like just the perfect storm for him with big plays. I will, however, use the Kansas City side, a little bit of Tyreek Hill, a little bit of some of these other guys, but Kareem Hunt is going to be the cash chalk lock on these smaller slates involving the Monday night game, and I think he absolutely should be. The guy has gotten off to a great start. Now, I think you need to watch him for regression because I think that with these big plays and these 50-yard touchdown runs and catches that he's been delivering, that's going to go away at some point. Those are random and unpredictable, and if he gets 4 on the year, he's already had 3 of them. So I would say watch for some regression, and the price tag scares me a little bit. But this is a matchup in the 6-point favorite and a 49-point total on this game. 28 points implied for the Chiefs. This is the type of scenario where you hand it to your running back and just let him work and let him eat. And Charcandrick West is not the ground and pound running back in that game. They're handing it to Kareem Hunt for that. So I do like the spot again this week. I'll worry about fading him maybe next week or so. So in a nutshell, there's your slate broken down 38 minutes. If I move on over here to FanDuel, I couldn't get my own projections in my own research station at DFS Army to sort the way I wanted to, and I apologize for that because it's the same thing I would do over there to find value. It's actually the tool that I do use, but here's a free one at Roto Grinders. You go into their NFL tab, their research area, and you find the projections. And what we're going to do is we're going to carry the projected points or the point per dollar over here. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at the salaries and we're going to find discrepancies. What I do when I really have the time is I go down the list and I write down the quarterbacks. I sort them out by value, points per dollar. and then I write down their salary discrepancies, and I take a net difference. For instance, Dak Prescott on another, on our own site, a private site, I found Dak Prescott was ranked number 11 or number one in value, uh, as far as the amount of value he's going to bring in this matchup, but he was the 11th highest priced quarterback. That to me is a differential of 10. If he's the number one projected, not straight up points projected, but point per dollar type of quarterback, yet he's the 11th ranked salary, that his 10 spots higher projection wise than his salary should be, or that his salary is making you pay for. That's a sale, that's a discount. That means he should be a higher priced quarterback based on his matchup. Therefore, he should be bringing you value. Therefore, I like him. I go back and I look at the game again and I see that they're home favorites by a decent amount. He's a ball control quarterback. He doesn't really take big shots down the field. He doesn't turn the ball over. He uses his legs, so he's got that floor. I mean, Dak is in a great, great spot this week. And the numbers bear out that he's underpriced for his matchup. So when I look at other, players, if I did want to do this using points, Aaron Rodgers is basically the highest projected point guy. He's not the highest point per dollar guy, which is why I like that value metric. Highest points, Russell Wilson. Here's a good one. Look at his salary, 7.9. He's the second highest projected. This may change my mind on him a little bit. Second highest projected point total, point getter. If I sort by salary, fifth, sixth, one, two, three, four, five, sixth highest salary. So there's 5 spots of value in Russell Wilson this week, according to RotoGrinders projections. Our projections will probably have him near the top. I don't know if it'll be 20.03, but it's worth looking into. You take another look, go back to the projections, see if we can find another higher guy at a cheaper price. There's Dak. Stafford, I don't know. Cam Newton, yuck. See, I can refute Cam Newton and say the dude sucks this year, so these projections are off. They're using either old historical numbers and putting too much weight into them, or they just are not thinking, watching the games. This is all computer algorithm. There needs to be some human element in your decision-making process. But if you run this list and you go down, let's do points per dollar, and you order them in this order: Dak, Russell. Well, those are the 2 we talked about. Hello. Cam, Aaron Rodgers, Andy Dalton, Tyrod Taylor, Manning, Kaiser, Cutler, Simeon, names we've talked about today. And now you go down, so these are your top, say, 10. What, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Top 10 points per dollar projected, and then we go look at their salary ranks. And very few of them are in this list, which means there's a ton of value in this. If we go to running backs and do the same thing, I hope this is making some sense. I will tell you that your highest valued quarterbacks right now, based on that differential that I'm kind of trying to explain to you: Dak Prescott, Tyrod Taylor, Jameis Winston, Case Keenum, Deshaun Kaiser. Your overvalued quarterbacks. Well, Matt Ryan's about right, and Aaron Rodgers is a little bit overpriced, overvalued. I'm sure Tom Brady is too, if I looked at him. But Brady's Brady. He can do Brady things. Some of the other guys I'm not that interested in that didn't really move up much. Well, Russell Wilson's kind of there, a couple of spots of value. Carson Palmer's another one. So I'm really focused more on Dak, Tyrod, maybe some Winston, some Deshaun Kaiser type guys this week, because I want that value at quarterback. Quarterback's a very consistent position most times. I'm very, very high on Dak. Okay, let's just call a spade a spade. Now, in the running back category, it's the same type of thing. You take the points per dollar, and then you start looking for cheap salaries. There's Buck Allen, McCaffrey. What you're looking for is guys that should be priced more. They should be priced accordingly. If they're the highest point per dollar or the highest projected point getter on the week, crud, hit the wrong button. Sorry, guys. Then what I should be doing is looking for salaries that stick out, salaries that look out of place. Carlos Hyde even. So these are spots that if you write this list down and compare it yourself, what I'm doing is I'm finding that Kareem Hunt is the top projected quarterback on the. I don't know why this must not have the Monday game on it. If I go Thursday through Monday, maybe that helps. Kareem Hunt charged to the top. No, Kareem Hunt number 3. They like LaShawn. Okay, well, Roto Grinders likes McCoy, Bell, and Hunt. Great, good for them. I happen to think that Hunt is the highest projected guy, so I differ from them a little bit. Great. But I have Hunt being the number 1 projected running back and the number 1 salary on that slate, which tells me that he's fairly priced according to that way of looking at things. But I look at Ezekiel Elliott, and he's I think the 2nd highest projected, but the 3rd highest salary. There is a little smidge of value in there. You look at Leonard Fournette, he's 5 spots cheaper than he's projecting. McCaffrey, 13 spots cheaper than he's projecting. Carlos Hyde, 7 spots. Tariq Cohen's 14 spots. I'm not using him, but the value's there. If he goes off, I won't be surprised. Running back's a little easier to project, therefore the prices kind of tend to fall in line. You don't find a lot of value in that running back. You typically are going to get what you pay for. But when you move over to wide receivers, you're going to see a lot more of that. In fact, when I looked at wide receiver, we'll see if we can make it show up on this particular graphic that Roto Grinders has given us for free. So, again, shout out to them. If I scroll down and I go by projected points again, maybe I need to go point per dollar. But projected points, let's look for a salary out of place. Hopkins, out of place. Michael Thomas, Baldwin, out of place. Landry, out of place. Larry Fitzgerald near the top. So there's nothing like other than Hopkins massively out of place. If I go points per dollar, oh shoot, I did it again. I'm anticipating it's going low to high, and instead it's going high to low, and it's catching me off. Either way, Jerron Brown points per dollar. That's a cheap one if you want yourself some savings. Go down here. You're going to find a lot of the cheaper guys. Antonio Brown, you're paying for floor. Different topic for a different day. But another way to do it. So the guys that I'm finding wide receiver wise, I found a lot of Devontae Parker, a lot of Larry Fitzgerald. I found a lot of Keenan Allen, Demaryius Thomas, Jarvis Landry, Emmanuel Sanders, a little bit of DeAndre Hopkins, a lot of Rashard Matthews for some reason. So you're going to have to dig into that number a little bit and see why that maybe popped up. A lot of Devin Funchess because he's cheap, but then a lot of Mohamed Sanu, which I talked about earlier and really, really liked him. So again, this is just a way to go through, write down your points per dollar or your projected points, and then go over and then re-rank them based on salary and see. It's something that the golf guys do an awful lot, which is another sport we cover at DFS Army. It's a way to find pricing mismatches. And it's just another thing that you can go through and look at when you're doing your research. If you write these things down on paper like I do, you order them up. That's how you do it. So anyway, we're 45 minutes in. Let's go ahead and wrap it up here. You got a little bit of concept at the end. You got a slate breakdown, well under an hour. Go to dfsarmy.com. Look me up. Follow me on Twitter at Chapadong. And, I'm in the Army at the same. I'm a coach and contributor inside there. I think that you're going to learn a lot. You're going to get more depth when you listen to the other VIP pods and check out the VIP type content. Hopefully you got enough information out of this that you understand that we do know what we're talking about inside the DFS Army. We have a lot of different resources, including our own, that we do utilize when we're doing our research. Learn all of that stuff. Learn how to allocate your contests. Learn how to break slates down, learn how to analyze game flow and things, and then look at the matchups, and then talk with a bunch of 100, 200, 300 other people on a weekly basis that are all thinking the same things, asking the same questions, and we all come up to the same conclusions, and usually we hit on them. So put that group to work for you by becoming a VIP member inside DFS Army. Again, this is Chapadong. Take a peek and give me a like or a thumbs up, subscribe on the YouTube video. Keep me rolling, and we will catch you guys on the inside.